Well, I think I'm going to get going. It's a little bit after 6 o'clock and get the 2021 annual meeting of the Nisqually Land Trust underway. I'm assuming everybody can see me. I can't see me, but I'm Kathy Mix. I'm the president of the Nisqually Land Trust Board. And we're so glad to have all of you. The numbers continue to go up. We're almost at 50 now. We have 100 people registered for our Nisqually Land Trust annual meeting. And I know a lot of you would rather be outside under a shelter somewhere, getting ready to eat George Walter's salmon and have some boiled potatoes and some libations with us. And we sure look forward to the time when we can do that again. We would have a lot of fun out there, even though it was a little rainy and maybe a little cold, but we sure miss seeing everybody in person. I'm still looking at the participant list and it's still going up a little. So I just wanted to reflect a minute as we get started here, that when I retired a few years ago, one of the things that was number one on my list of things I wanted to do in retirement was to be part of a conservation organization, because I care about saving our beautiful wild places, our fish, our wildlife, and places of solitude, and taking care of those for the generations to come. And I have to say, I couldn't have found a greater organization to work with than the Nisqually Land Trust over the last 6 years that I've been on the board. Since I've been on the board, I've seen the number of acres protected by the land trust along the main stem of the Nisqually and its tributaries just increase year after year. I've seen an expanded marine area. I've seen the creation of a community forest. And I've seen engagement by the land trust in incredible initiatives like the Carbon Project, which are very cutting edge. And I'm here tonight to tell you all that you are the ones that have made this happen. In the face of a really difficult year, watching what was happening on Mount Rainier and with our climate, I know that you are making a difference. And you should give yourselves a collective pat on the back for everything you are doing to protect and restore one of Puget Sound's healthiest and most resilient watersheds. So let me just say tonight as we get started, thank you for all you have done to take care of this wild river that's in our backyard. Together we are seeing that our watershed sustains its people, fish, wildlife, and our collective spirit for generations to come. So now I want to give some specific thank yous. First, I want to thank you to all of our volunteers of every age who are out there digging, pulling, doing hard work in the watershed. To our donors, big and small, every dollar counts. And to our many partners, including businesses, the Nisqually Indian Tribe, state and local governments, other nonprofits, you've all done a great job to help us. So a collective round of applause, if you will, for everyone and all that they have done. And let me give another round of introductions. I'm going to thank some specific people here tonight that are always there for the Land Trust and have been doing the work day in and day out for a long time. First, let me take notice of some officials that I think we have as guests, or at least signed up as guests. I'm not sure they're here right now. Longtime local leader Karen Frazier, our former state senator, J.W. Foster, the former board president and mayor of Yelm, Ty Mesner and Gary Edwards, Thurston County commissioners. I hope they are with us tonight. They were planning to come. And then I want to thank second, and probably as most important as anybody we can thank here tonight, is our wonderful staff that do the hard day-to-day work of the Nisqually Land Trust. In alphabetical order, I'm going to thank them. Kim Bredensteiner, our Associate Director, Nikki Dizon, our development manager, Jeanette Dorner, who you're going to hear from in a while, our executive director, Courtney Murphy, her picture's there in the snow, our stewardship assistant, Maya Navapur, our community engagement and AmeriCorps member, Lot Off, another AmeriCorps member, Habitat Stewardship, our new this year land steward, Ian Stoner, and Fletch. Good Fletch. Fletch isn't the dog, it's Fletcher Ward, our operations manager, there with his, I think, Labradoodle in that picture. So thanks to the wonderful staff. And then I want to thank board members. And there's the picture of the board members. And before I go through the current board, there are a couple of other individuals I want to thank, former board members who may be with us tonight, I hope. Brian Sullivan, former president of the board, Martin McCallum, John Grettenberger, and Mary Gentry, who they continue to help by volunteering on committees and doing great work for the Land Trust, even though they're not officially on the board. And I want to make a special shout out to Nancy Reardon, who's not on the board, but is just being a real asset to our development committee and helping the board. Also, I want to give a shout out to two of our consultants. You might have heard of a guy named Joe Kane, who continues to help us with acquisitions, and Eric Erler, who do a great job. So now I'm just going to say, let's give a big round of thanks to our board. We all enjoy working with each other. We're looking forward to the time we can see each other and get to know each other in person again. So in addition to me up there is Roger Andrasik, our vice president, Tom Eaton, our secretary, or our treasurer, I'm sorry. I think Tom Eaton is our treasurer and Sean Smith is our secretary. George Walter, board member emeritus. Michele Buckley, who you're going to get to hear from later at the end of the program. Lloyd Federley, Pagan Frank, Brad Jones, Hanford McLeod, Suzanne Nelson, Sonny Thompson, Katie Wilcox, and last but not least, our student board fellow, Liam Coyle. So that's everybody who's behind this organization, and let's give them all a big round of applause as well. So I'm going to turn this over to Jeanette Dorner, who's going to have an interesting conversation with a local author and also present some information about the Land Trust. So thank you all, and I'm signing off now for the time being. Bye-bye.
Thank you for that great welcome, Kathy. That was wonderful. Well, as Kathy said, we're so sad that we can't be with you all in person. I have very fond memories of many salmon bakes out there on Puget Sound at Oddfellows Park. So some of you are probably remembering that as well, but this is our safe option instead. And so we have some really fun things that we want to share with you all tonight. First, we're going to kick it off. I'm going to have a conversation with my old colleague, Tim Ransom, and talk to him about the book that he recently published about the history of the Nisqually Valley. I'm really excited to have a conversation with him. Appreciate him taking some time tonight to do that. And then I'm going to take a few minutes to just run through some of the highlights of things that we've been up to this year and upcoming attractions. And we have a special announcement about a recent accomplishment. So I'm excited about that. And then we'll wrap it up at the end with a conversation from one of our newest board members and just talk to her a little bit about her experience with the Land Trust and why she's joined the board. And then we're scheduled to end at 7, but for anybody that wants to stick around afterwards for a more informal chat and discussion, question and answers, what we'll do is we'll formally end at 7, the webinar format. And then if you want to just stay logged on, we'll wait a minute or two for people who don't want to stay on to sign off. And then we'll just go ahead and turn everybody's cameras on and we can have a chat and pretend we're all sitting around the tables with our salmon dinners and drinks and networking. So anyway, so that's kind of what we're planning on tonight. And I would invite Tim to turn his camera on. There we go. Welcome, Tim.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Thanks so much
Yeah.
for inviting me.
So great to have you. Time to chat with me tonight. My first memory of Tim is when I was working at the Nisqually tribe in the salmon recovery program, and I would attend Nisqually River Council meetings. And Tim was attending as a representative of the Puget Sound Action Team.
Right.
And so that was a while ago.
It was.
But so it's really fun to get back together with you. And, I think out of that experience that you had with the River Council, it was the inspiration for this book that you've published, which is just a really wonderful documentation of some of the history of the Nisqually Valley. So really,
It was. Yeah. That was where I met Kenny Braggett. He was there as well, as I'm sure you well remember. And I didn't know Kenny from anybody else at that point. I was sort of new to the whole watershed and just trying to figure out what I was doing, but I kept hearing Kenny tell his stories, and ultimately that caught my interest and produced the whole next 20 years of involvement and ended up with the book that we're talking about.
Yeah. So maybe for folks who aren't as familiar with Nisqually and never got the wonderful opportunity to meet Kenny, can you give maybe just a little bit of background on who Kenny was and what inspired you about meeting him to write this book?
Absolutely. Kenny was the last Braggett of his family's line, but his family had been on the land, the east side of the Delta, across from what was originally, or at one point in time, the Brown Farm, now the Refuge, and that his family, his grandfather had come from the Midwest, but before that from Norway, in search of a life here, and had settled in Tacoma, but needed land to run some horses on. And so he ended up buying about 147 acres of property just on that side of the river. And so 100 years later, actually a little bit more of that, Kenny was the last member of his family to survive. His brother had been killed earlier. His parents were dead, and it was up to him to decide what to do with the land, knowing that he had no children and that it needed to be taken care of.
Yeah. I remember my first meeting with Kenny was when, before I was working for the tribe, when I was just getting involved in the River Council as a citizen volunteer. Right. And I met him at a Citizens Advisory Committee meeting where I had been invited to come and do a presentation about some of the work that I was doing in my community on Ohop Creek. And I remember it was a cold February evening, and he cornered me in the parking lot outside the Prairie Motel afterwards. And he talked to me for an hour in the cold because he was just so excited to meet a fellow citizen of the watershed that cared about the land. And I remember he made quite an impression.
Yes. Well, a big part of Kenny's life was making sure that everyone knew what his family had done to protect the land for 3 generations of their family life, and then for the future, by fending off what they considered, at least, efforts to make it into something more than it was, or other than it was, to develop it, to turn it into housing, to turn it into just another piece of the refuge that was happening across the way without any recognition that it was his family's life and legacy. So he had a lot of practice in trying to talk everybody he could find into understanding his point of view and ultimately supporting him or his family as things moved forward.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are familiar with the story about saving the Delta from development from the port, about the folks that got together to save the Brown Farm and were
Right.
responsible for getting the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the Wildlife Refuge established.
Right.
But the story, I still remember at Kenny's funeral, the eulogy that you gave, because you'd already been working with him for a couple of years and collecting information and
Actually
stories.
sticks, yeah. Mhm.
And it was such a powerful story about that moment where it could have been so different. I'm wondering if you would share that story with everybody
Sure.
tonight.
Sure.
About what you did.
This was after a whole array of activities, approaches by other entities out there, including the environmental community, to get the Braggett Farm for what they saw as important. But this was in the early 70s, and when I know that the Port of Tacoma was intent on making a super port in Nisqually. They felt that they didn't have sufficient facilities in Tacoma. And so they were trying to get a hold of it and fighting battles with everybody, including state agencies. But at some point, they decided that the Braggett, by then 410 acres on the east side, was key. And they came to the family, as Kenny put it, the lawyer in the shiny suit showed up with $1 million check for Kenny's father, Walt Braggett. And at that point, Walt had been milking cows twice a day for 50 years, at least, and was exhausted, and also had been leading the fight against these other agents, the agencies and so on, to protect the land. And he said he wanted to go for it. He wanted to retire to Tacoma and put his feet up and have a nice life. For Kenny, this was his legacy, his future, and his birds, as we've talked about. He loved the land and what it was for, as far as he was concerned, was for, and that was to support a vigorous wildlife bird presence, some of which he wanted to shoot, but mostly he enjoyed them. And so he said, no, we're not going to do it. We're not going to sell. And he and his father got into a fist fight outside the farmhouse in the gravel of the parking lot. And these were a couple of barrel guys, just incredible. They'd been lifting milk cans, 100-pound milk cans all their lives. And so it was quite something, apparently. But quickly, Kenny's mother came out of the kitchen and yelled at him, stop it, you boys, kind of thing. And they eventually did stop. And Walt got up and gave Kenny a hand and yanked him up and said, okay, you win. Either you go get a job with the state, thinking that was going to help pay for the future of the farm, or you get into the barn and you milk cows for your next, for your 60 years. And that's what happened. And of course, Kenny ended up giving his life to the farm, never marrying, and then ending up being a bachelor farmer, Norwegian farmer who had to figure out what to do with his land.
Yeah, I just remember that was such a powerful story,
And soon after that, the port gave up. They as I said, there were a lot of entities out there battling the port, but certainly the inability to get the Braggett piece must have been a big blow.
Yeah, really powerful.
Yeah.
So maybe fast forward then, because you mentioned, then Kenny then became the owner of the land.
Right.
And there were lots of people that were asking him about it. And what did he share with you, and what did you write about in terms of how he made the decision about what to do with the land?
Kenny had been watching, among other things, the refuge across the way from its beginnings. And the beginnings were rough. There were floods. There were times when the birds were being poached over there, which was anathema to him. I mean, he wanted everything to go according to rule and law. And he didn't really trust entities that he didn't feel were good neighbors. And the feds, pardon my phrase, but that's what Kenny and I used. The feds never came for coffee and stayed for cookies. They always came with a threat of one kind of another to take over the farm and give them 10 cents on the dollar for it and that sort of thing. So Kenny was adamant that that was not going to happen. He was adamant that it wasn't going to be subsumed under a expansion of the city of DuPont to the east. All sorts of things going on. What he was looking for was an entity, a body, a source of money, because he felt like it was important that that be part of it, that shared his values, shared his understanding of that the land needed to be conserved for what it was, and protected from misuse by many others. And it wasn't until he really got to know the tribe, primarily initially through George Walter and David Trout, that he began to understand that that was who that group was, that shared his values, and he could count on to protect it after he was gone.
Would you say that that was a very predictable outcome for someone who looked at Kenny?
No. The thing about the Braggots, and Kenny was the star in this, was that they were all over the place. I mean, they definitely wanted to get some kind of financial return out of life. They wanted to stay on the land forever and run cows on it forever and all this sort of thing. But when push came to shove, and as he got older and ill, because when you and I knew him, he was not in that great shape after bouts of cancer and other things. I think he started to pay more attention to the real importance of the future of the land, and understood that, as he said, if they couldn't grow cows, they should grow salmon on it.
I see David Trout in the chat just reminded us of that. He used to say that.
Yes, right. That's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Great.
So, Kenny was definitely complicated, and there are a lot of people out there who, when I mention his name, they go, "Oh, that guy, he was a kook," or he couldn't get rid of him. When I met him at the council, he'd get the microphone and talk forever, and you could just see everybody else just sort of waiting for him to get done so they could get on with business. But it was what he was saying that caught me, and I think was needed to be said at the time.
Yeah. It's funny, as you mentioned, he was always really well known for liking to talk for a long time. And I think I shared with you this story about how after the tribe purchased the property from him, and we were moving forward with when I worked for the tribe, we were moving forward with the restoration of the estuary area that was on his property. And
right.
And when we did the first phase and we had a celebration, we had some speakers, and Kenny was scheduled to speak. He wanted to speak, and we were all very nervous about him getting up,
Right.
and
Yep.
if it was going to blow our timeline. And he gave the shortest speech I ever remember Kenny giving. And he just got up and he said, my family borrowed this land for 100 years, and now we're giving it back.
Yeah.
It was so eloquent.
Yeah, as I say, I think the later it got, the more he bought into understand, to that understanding, with the good feeling that the tribe, even though they were going to break out the dikes that his family had spent 100 years building, and which really hurt when it happened, I know, even with that, he understood that it was things were going in the right direction.
Yeah. One of the reasons I thought it would be really great to have you kind of talk about your book and what you learned from Kenny, even though that story isn't specifically about the land trust. Kenny was a huge supporter of the land trust. I see Joe Kane, our former executive director, is on and putting in the chat a few things about how Kenny was a huge supporter of our work
Yes.
and left us some things when he passed as well. And I
Right.
remember him coming to the salmon bakes. I remember hanging out with him at the salmon bake. So
Yeah.
it's sort of fitting that we're talking of
Yeah.
remembering him at one of these. But it seems to me that the story of his connection with the land and his opportunity as a landowner to decide what he was going to do with the land and the legacy for the future seems like a great parallel for the work that we are doing at the Land Trust.
Absolutely. And that was the most important thing to him, was that he do the right thing by the land. Excuse me, I get worked up sometimes. And why he didn't want it to go in directions that he felt there would be no control over. And I think that was his concern about it becoming part of the wildlife refuge directly, for example. But it was extremely important to his family, and especially to him personally, that he felt confident that the land was going to be cared for in the way they had been doing.
Yeah, that's really special.
Yeah.
Joe was putting in the chat, I don't know if I knew this story, that Ken left the Land Trust a bequest that included a 50% share in 151 weapons.
Well, when the last thing he was doing, Kenny, was relearning the art of black powder shooting. He had stuff in his basement there. He was loading his own bullets and all this sort of thing. But the story I remember the best was, I wasn't there, but people would take him out to the what do you call them, the where you go out and shoot birds from, the blinds that were out on the flats, and he'd go shoot. But by the time near the end, he'd lost the sight in his shooting eye, his left eye. He was a left-handed shooter, so he was one-eyed with his shotgun, swinging it around, trying to hit a bird, and everybody was ducking and all this sort of thing. But after that, he just went out and to be out there after he felt, when he was close to his passing, just to be out there, and that was the most important thing to him.
Yeah. Well, I think you worked for quite a while putting this together. I knew you were working on this book for a long time, so I was so excited when it came out. And I think it's going to be so valuable for future generations for you to have documented this part of our history and this story.
I hope so, because it's so easy for stories to get lost. We move on, and all of a sudden the Braggett piece is the property is part of the, considered part of the refuge now, and it belongs to the tribe, and the tribe will continue to have a presence there. But the rest of the world is sort of, doesn't even remember how to spell Braggett, sort of thing. So I very much hope that the story will go on, and that it will be useful. I mean, we haven't really talked about the whole land use piece, but there's a lot of lessons in there for learning how people rise up really to make change. And in that case, it was the way land was thought about, and the way it became used, and what the best use for society could be.
Yeah. And, and I think, Tim, just to add on to what you're talking about, I think what's great about Kenny's story is he's not your stereotypical person that you would originally have thought of as the one that rises up to save the land.
Right.
Right. People could stereotype him in a certain way. And so it really is a great story about how it's important to understand people's motivations underneath.
What would be fun to share with folks the importance of the McBride family in playing that more traditional role of rising up. This is Albert Bud McBride primarily, who were neighbors of the Braggetts just to the south. along Mounts Road. And when push came to shove on the potential misuse of the Delta, Bud and others like Margaret McKinney formed the Nisqually Delta Association, which had a huge impact, so there was all of that going on as well. And sometimes they and Kenny agreed, and sometimes they and Kenny didn't agree. So your point's well taken, but let's not forget all those good folks who fought that battle as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I am very grateful to all of them.
Yeah.
I often think of this work that we're doing to protect the watershed as a bit of a relay race. And each one does some important work. And then when they're ready to step away, they hand off the baton, and then others of us come along and grab the baton and try and keep going. So
the only problem with that is that the picture is that there's an end point.
that's true. It's a never ending relay race.
We'll be doing this for the rest of existence.
There's a picture for you. Well, Tim, this has been really great. I wish we could chat for another hour because it's so much fun to chat about this, but we're getting to the end of our time that we scheduled to talk to you. But I've noticed in the chat, a few people have put the link if they're interested in finding your book and reading
I will do
more
that.
about the history. Well, there's people who've been putting it in for you, but
Great. Okay, good.
if you want to
I'll
say
check out the chat.
that,
Yeah.
if you want to say anything about that too, you're welcome to.
Well, just the local bookstores have it, Browsers and Orca, and it's also in the library, and you can buy it either directly from me or from my publisher, so printer. So
Great. Did you show everybody the copy of the book at the beginning?
I didn't. I actually got ready to.
Yeah,
There it is.
That's
That's
book.
Kenny at age 11 with his first shotgun and first of thousands of birds I'm sure he brought down.
Yeah, that was something I learned in the book. I knew he loved to shoot and to duck hunt and all of that, but I didn't realize what a good shot he was.
Oh, he was, yes. Yeah, he was a national award winner with a .22 in his youth, and but was a great, according to all his hunting buddies, he was the best shot out there to bring down birds on the wing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, again, Tim, thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure.
It was great to chat with you. And
I'll stay around and be back later. If there are any
wonderful.
questions.
Great.
Okay.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, hopefully everybody enjoyed that. It's fun to see the chat while we're having our conversation. I am going to attempt to reshare the PowerPoint, and we don't need to talk about the board anymore. So I'm going to do a little presentation just to kind of update you guys, everybody, on some of the things that we have been working on over the last year, some of our accomplishments. So just as a reminder, we work, for anybody that isn't familiar with our service area, we work in the Nisqually watershed and then in the marine waters just off of the mouth of the Nisqually River, from the mountain to the sea. And we have 3 focus areas: the upper watershed, where we're working on protecting forests and spotted owl marbled murrelet habitat, and then the middle to lower watershed, where we've been working since the beginning on buying and protecting salmon habitat, and then down in the shorelines of the Nisqually Reach, and just in the last few years, we started working to protect those shorelines that are also critical habitat for juvenile fish, salmon, that are leaving the Nisqually River. And we've made major progress since we were founded in 1989. Over the years, we've been gradually adding, and it's been sort of exponential in our growth. We are now to 8,751 acres protected as of last week. That is a newly updated number. So I'm going to talk just a little bit about a few of the projects that we've been working on this year that we've been able to close on. So you'll see them here on the map, sort of distributed on the 3 areas that we were talking about in the watershed. So we had some addition to our Nisqually Community Forest. We've added some property down in our Ohop Bay protected area. And then our most recent acquisition was in the lower Ohop. So you can see this bar chart that shows from year to year how much additional land we have protected. And so as Tim said, it's a never-ending relay. So we hope to see that bar continue to rise as we continue to work with our partners in the watershed. So this is old news to some folks, but we started off with a bang with our latest acquisition of forest land up in the headwaters of the Michele River, the Busy Wild Creek. There was 2,200 acres that we were adding to the Nisqually Community Forest. And this was a joint project between the Land Trust and the Nisqually tribe. And we should mention Kathy made a special acknowledgement of this, and I know Joe's watching. So Joe Kane, who was our former executive director, we're very fortunate that he stayed on with us as a special projects consultant. And so he's continued to work on some of our big acquisition projects, including this one. And so this was something that he had been working on before he transitioned. And he was able to work with our partners in the tribe to seal the deal on this. And this was a really exciting addition to the community forest. And you can see, so this is a map that shows where our forest is located, just near Ashford, in between Gifford-Pinchot National Forest and the Elbe Hills State Forest. And we're sort of filling in the gap in between. And this latest acquisition in April was in this area in red. And so you can see that the tribe purchased a big chunk, and then the Land Trust purchased the other part, and together 2,200 additional acres were added. And this land now has been moved into our Nisqually Community Forest. So it's all being jointly managed as part of our community forest initiative. Next, just about 2 months later, in June, we closed on 6 acres, which is in our Ohop Bay protected area, which is on Johnson Point, just a little bit to the northwest of the Nisqually estuary. And we have been working on protecting the Ohop Bay area since 1989. And we had 40 acres that were already in protected status there. And Julia and Douglas Hart were owners of a 6-acre parcel of wetland forest that was wetland that fed fresh water into the estuary below. And they approached us after owning their property since the 1970s. They approached us and asked if we would want to purchase the property from them. And so we were able to work with them on a bargain sale and add an additional 6 acres. And the project was led by—
Hey, Jeanette, it's Fletcher from the control room. Sorry to break in. I think the paper you're shuffling on top of your laptop is getting into your microphone.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
sorry about that.
Thank you for the tech support, Fletch. Excellent. Okay, I'll try not to like shuffle my notes while I'm talking. We're very excited about being able to add to that protected area. Pocket estuaries are really important habitat for juvenile salmon that are leaving the river as they're heading out into the open ocean. And being able to protect these kinds of habitats for them is really important in our overall salmon recovery work. And late breaking news, we are really excited to announce our most recent acquisition, which is in our lower Ohop protected area. Last week, we closed on an additional 10.5 acres along Ohop Creek and the floodplain. Let me show you a map. So for those of you that might be a little familiar with the Ohop Creek, we have been working for a while on a major initiative to restore lower Ohop Creek from the ditched, a ditch that was dug a little over 100 years ago by early settlers in the valley that really altered the habitat in the creek. And we started in 2000, when I first was working for the tribe is when this initiative started. And since that time, the Land Trust has been working to acquire properties within this restoration reach. And then the South Sound Salmon Enhancement Group has partnered with the Land Trust in managing the projects to do the restoration of the creek. And so you'll see at this star here, this is Peterson Road on our first property that we acquired as part of this initiative. And the squiggly line here is the start of the restored section of the creek. So there's about 2 miles that we've restored so far downstream of Peterson Road. But as you can see, there is a star up here. This is the section that is identified in the salmon recovery plan that the tribe developed with partners that's planned still for restoration when it's possible to move forward to do the same kind of project that we did down here, but for the rest of this reach. And so the Land Trust has been slowly working to acquire properties when they become available from willing landowners and filling in pieces of the puzzle. And so this right here, this orange section here is the latest piece of the puzzle that we just purchased from Marcia Berger, who has lived in the valley and owned this property since the 1970s. And she was very excited about this acquisition. She's able to continue to own the land that's up on the uphill on the valley wall and sell the floodplain and the creek to us. And she said, you know, we can sit up here and look out on the beautiful floodplain and still pretend it's ours, even though it's yours. So anyway, we're very excited about this. And this is another project that Joe was able to complete for us. All right. Okay, so those are some of the highlights for acquisitions. And then, of course, once we own the properties, that's just the beginning. Then there's the stewardship. And so in places where we need to restore the forests, we have been working on planting projects since the beginning of when we started buying properties that needed planting. And we have this year, now there we go. My camera was right over the notes here. So this year so far, we've planted 16,800 native trees and shrubs. And the we is a combination of our volunteers that show up. Some of them show up every week, every Wednesday to help us with whatever we ask them for help on one of our properties. And then the other photos you see here is the Nisqually Tribe's natural resources salmon recovery technician crew that helps us with the riparian restoration projects. And so they are responsible for many of these trees as well. And so that's a really important partnership we have with the tribe. And that means to date, over 400,000 native trees and shrubs we've planted in our properties throughout the Nisqually watershed. And so we're just going to keep going. And then the rest of the year, when it's not a good time to be planting, as we said, we have work parties every week of the year, every Wednesday, and sometimes we have them on Saturdays. Sometimes it's 2 times a week. And we have great volunteers that come out and help us remove invasive plants. This picture, these folks just a week or 2 ago helped us rescue this cedar, cut back all the blackberry, non-native blackberry that was growing up around the tree. So they come out every week and help us with removing invasive plants, with the tree plantings, with collecting old tree tubes, all sorts of things. And so this year alone, we've had over 200 volunteers that have come out to help us. And they've dedicated over 2,000 hours of work in helping us take care of our properties. And we could not take care of our properties without our great volunteer volunteers help. And to date, we've had over 2,600 volunteers that have participated in the lifetime of our organization, with 34,000 hours that they've dedicated. And that's kind of an underestimate, but at least that much. Going back to projects, so in the community forest, in the forest that we own in the upper watershed by Ashford, about 5 years ago, the Land Trust did a pilot carbon project to sell carbon credits for part of the forest that we own and we manage and steward. And this section here, 520 acres, was put into, it was the first approved carbon credit program, forest carbon credit program in Washington State, enrolled in the California carbon credit market. And we sold those credits to Microsoft. 5 years later, we have moved forward with additional 3,200 acres that we are partnering with an organization called Blue Source, who is helping us to develop and market the credits from these 3,200 acres. So to do that, we first have to measure actually what's going on with the forest, and how to be able to estimate how many credits that our forest is able to offset carbon credits. And so Blue Source contracted with a crew from an organization called Resilient Forestry. And so there was a 10-member crew that was out for many months over the last year, measuring 204 different plots. And we were just talking with them recently, and they were giving us some of their results. And they said that one of the interesting things in one of the plots, they actually found a Douglas fir Western hemlock grove that was over 230 years old. And one of the trees was 270 years old. And so that was news to us. We knew that we had a few places where there were 100-plus-year-old trees, but we didn't realize that we had them more than 2 centuries old. So that was exciting news to find out about that stand. We're still learning about the forests that we acquired. And the results of that inventory is that over the next 10 years, they've calculated that this forest will generate 274,000 offset credits. And that's the equivalent of taking 60,000 cars off the road for 1 year. So we are glad to be part of the effort to remove carbon, and also to be able to use that to generate funds that will help us to be able to continue to manage this forest and to improve its ecological health over time. Okay, so switching again. So we do have opportunities. We try to offer opportunities to have folks that want to get out in the watershed to see our properties or to see the watershed, engage. We've created something called nature walks that we've had for a couple of years now. And so we've had a couple that have already happened this summer and fall. We had a great nature walk up in our Mount Rainier Gateway property up above Ashford. Just in the last couple of weeks, we did 2 salmon viewing events out in the Eatonville area, because the pink salmon and the Chinook salmon are spawning in Ohop and the Michele River right now. So we had fun showing people the fish out in the Eatonville area. And then we partnered with a kayak company to offer kayak trips out in the Nisqually Reach, and both a bioluminescence tour and a daytime tour. And so lots of fun opportunities to get out, to get connected with the watershed and really see what we're up to. So if you miss those, but you would like to get involved in one of our opportunities in the future, we have some events still coming up. So just this weekend, this Saturday is Orca Recovery Day. And we are going to be participating with many organizations throughout the state. Actually, I think it's maybe even multiple states that participate in Orca Recovery Day. And our event is going to be from 9 to noon. And we're going to be asking folks to help us harvest some willow and cottonwood stakes and potting them up so that we can get them ready for future plantings. So there's an opportunity. If you go to our website and our calendar, you can sign up for that. If you don't want to do an action project, you just want to get out and see nature, we also have a nature walk happening simultaneously, a morning bird walk. So if you want to go birding, I think I was told there's about 3 slots left for that. And then later in November, we've got a mushroom foray, which I heard last year was a hugely popular event. So if you want to go searching for mushrooms with some folks that are mushroom experts, there's an opportunity to do that in November. And then there's lots of other things going on our calendar. So you can always go to our calendar on our website and check out what activities are coming up and sign up through our website. So the end of the year also is our year-end appeal, where we ask our supporters to help us out with your resources to help us continue this work that we're doing to protect and steward the watershed. So there is an event called Give Local, which starts on November 1st. And there's going to be an opportunity for folks to donate through the Give Local campaign, and we'll be posting more information about that. So watch our social media or our website. But the neat thing about Give Local, if you want to really leverage your funds, is the Give Local folks actually match proportionately to each organization. They have a certain amount that they set aside as match, and depending on how much each organization raises, they get a certain percentage of match as well. So it's an opportunity for you to leverage your impact if you donate through the Give Local campaign. And if you don't want to worry about that, you can always just go to our website, or we'll be sending out some materials, and we'll accept your donation whichever way you want to send it to us. Okay. Oh, I'm gonna go back. Okay. So with that, I am going to double check with Fletch, the voice that came in. Are we ready to, can you bring Michele in?
I definitely can. Yes, one moment.
So Fletch is going to bring in Michele Buckley, who is one of our newer board members. And we asked Michele to help us close out this portion of our evening by sharing a little bit about her history with the Land Trust and why she's joined us on the board. And there she is. Hey, Michele.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
Good. And who is that with you?
This is Elizabeth right here. Liz, you want to wave?
Hi, Elizabeth.
You might want to, Jeanette, you might want to stop sharing for this part, just so the faces are bigger.
Actually, I have a surprise, Fletch.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I'll get out of here.
It's all right. So, Michele, can you see?
I can see, yes. I can see decades old photos of myself.
So tell us what these photos are that you shared with me today.
Yeah, so one of the questions Jeanette had asked me, and really, you know, for me, the history of my experience with the Land Trust, she had asked me about my first memory of the Land Trust, and it took me down a walk down memory lane today, and I think this is it. I think this is my first memory of being involved in the Land Trust. So that's me in the white jacket with the binoculars, or in the taller of the 2 kids in the other photo. I believe about 11 years old, and I apologize if you can hear my other 3-year-old yelling in the background. But this is me with my mom, my dad, my sister on our very first Nisqually float trip. Hey, Annie, you want to come here? Yeah. All right. This is my other one who wants to be in the picture as well. And I can remember this. George Walter was on the raft with us when I was 11. I am a few decades older than that now, so it just shows, you know, for me, the history of my experience with the Land Trust, and it's been a part
And Rai Rai.
Yep, that's Mama and your Aunt Rai Rai. That's right. And so it's been a part of my family for really as long as I can remember. My mom was very involved in the land trust, and I can remember her talking about it from my earliest days.
That's so great. So here we are a couple decades later, as you said. And so what inspired you to join our board?
It really is that strong personal connection for me to the land, to the water, to this just wonderful environment. And now that I have girls of my own, and we love so much being able to get up and enjoy the land and just the resources that are there. I want to make sure that I'm doing what I can to protect it, and I want to make sure that I'm teaching them to be stewards of it as well. So so it's, for me, it really is all about making sure that we can protect it and ensure that this future generation gets, yep, that's Annie and Lizzie. Yep, eating some blueberries at Jeanette's house. And so making sure that they get to enjoy it the same way that I did for my entire life. And I hope that for their children and their children's children, that they'll get to experience it in the same way that we all have. That is.
Well, I just remember it was so fun to have you with your family out when we had our little gathering out at the place on Ohop Creek, and seeing you share with your daughters, being out at the creek, and of course, sampling the blueberries as we see in the picture too. But I think it's a wonderful example of it's kind of what Tim was saying about how this is kind of a never-ending relay, right? And so you are taking up the baton, the next generation from your parents, and so we really appreciate you being a board member and all that you're doing to help us with the next phase of our work.
Well, I love it. And I love, certainly the support that everyone on this call gives to the organization and allows us to do this work. It's been an incredible opportunity for me to be able to get involved, and I look forward to doing it for many years to come. It's just been a fantastic year for me getting to be on the board.
Well, thank you so much, Michele. Really appreciate you and your girls taking some time to visit with all of us tonight. That was a great addition.
It was on the scale of how embarrassing it could have been. It wasn't too bad. So, with 3-year-olds, you never know what you're going to get.
That is true. It could have been a moment. We didn't ask them to serenade us tonight, though.
Not tonight, though. I saw that JW's on the call, so they'll be disappointed to know they didn't get to sing along.
Right. We'll do the sing along later. All right. Well, it's exactly 7 o'clock. So I think we'll go ahead and say that the formal part of our presentation is complete. And then Fletch, the magic wizard behind the curtain, has said that for anybody who does want to stay on and chat for a little bit, that he will be able to turn people's cameras on. So this is going to transform from a Zoom webinar to a regular Zoom meeting for those that are familiar with that, kind of. It'll feel like that. And Tim has said he's still available, and I think Kathy might be coming back as well. And so we'll just be available to just chat with folks and hang out and see what people want to talk about. So anybody who doesn't want to be part of this part is welcome to log off. And whoever hangs out, Fletch is going to promote you into actually being part of the on-screen event. So thanks to all of you for participating tonight, for tuning in. I hope you were inspired and learned something new about what was going on with the Land Trust. And hopefully we'll see you out on the river.